Good afternoon. My name is Brent Goodman. I'm one of the directors here at UF Human Resources. Today, we're going to talk about a prompt that we designed to help write job descriptions. We recently published a new web page on the HR website, and we'll include a link in the comments of this video that help introduce users that aren't familiar with ChatGPT or GPT types of AI with the concept and what it's capable of and how you might be able to leverage it when you're creating new jobs or updating job descriptions. If you've never used ChatGPT before, I would say there's some things that are pretty useful and there's some things that it's not that great at. Essentially, GPT is a form of AI that creates text. So it's great at coming up with an introductory text, helping to correct language or grammar, providing overall content and structure in a pretty standardized way. But it does have its limitations. When it comes to position descriptions and some other things that you might do for a job posting, it's not necessarily going to know who a position reports to, what the working hours of that position is, and some other details of it. And so we found it to be a very useful tool because it can do a pretty good draft that gets you 80% there. And managers and employees often find it easier to edit a document than to start purely from scratch with a brand new document. So usually the first step in the process would be to go to whatever AI platform you're going to use. Again, I focused on ChatGPT just because it tends to be the most popular right now. UFIT strongly encourages people to use Microsoft Copilot, but there's a number of different GPT-related applications that you could use. We've created a custom prompt that you'll see in the screen here, which essentially would take our job profiles that we have listed on our HR website, and in combination with the prompt, it allows ChatGPT to start to draft a job description that follows kind of the format that we have here at the university. It would give you a summary of the role, the essential functions, other elements that you would want to include in a formal position description. Again, there will be some things that it won't know, like it won't necessarily be able to estimate the percentage of time or who this position reports to, but we find that it's very useful and gets a user headed down the path much quicker than having to start from scratch. Once you've decided what GPT platform you're going to use, we would go and copy from the clipboard this nifty icon that makes it really easy. And then I open a Word document that would allow me to cut and paste this prompt. So I just hit Control V and it'll paste the prompt into your application. You can do this in Notepad. I'm doing it in Word, but any kind of document editor would allow you to do it. We also would need to know what job profile or roughly what job title that you plan to request. And so if you visit our team's title site, and it's titles.hr.ufl.edu, and I'm going to focus on a staff position because that's the ones that we encounter the most. And let's assume for this particular role that I'm interested in an accountant position. Essentially what I would do is I would go through the different job families. I will identify which position I think that I'm interested in. And so in this particular case, I'm going to use an accountant 2 as the example. And this takes you to what UF has kind of broadly defined as a job profile for an accountant 2. And it includes some pretty basic information like the job code, job title, a summary, kind of the typical things we would expect for this level of a position to perform, as well as the education and experience requirements. And this is the information that we're going to use to help generate a position description. And so if I switch briefly back to our prompt, I'm going to fill in just a couple areas on the prompt. I'm going to change this section that says Insert Job Title, and I'm going to put the title that I'm requesting. So I'm going to say an accountant 2. Well, it helps if I could spell accountant 2. And then the only other thing that I'm going to change at the end of this is I'm going to cut and paste the actual job profile from my UFL here. And so if I select the job title and just highlight all the way down, I usually stop at the end of the competencies. I don't know that you really need to copy the job family information. And I'm going to delete, and I'm going to paste that information into our prompt. From there, if I hit Control A, it's going to highlight the entire prompt, everything that I need for ChatGPT to help me out. And then let's do Control C. So I'm going to copy the entire prompt And then I would go to chatgpt.com. ChatGPT is a text-based tool. Like, it's going to interact with you based on different text information that you put into this text box area here at the bottom. In this particular case, we're using a pretty lengthy prompt because we're wanting ChatGPT to structure the response in a certain way. And so the majority of the prompt is asking it to format its response in a way that mirrors the areas that we ask for on our job descriptions. But because I've already copied it, if I hit Control V, it would paste that entire prompt into this message entry area. And then if you hit Submit, it should analyze the prompt that you've provided and start to generate a draft position description based on the information that you've provided. As I mentioned before, there's some times where it's not going to know the information, right? And so it is putting in some brackets into the narrative that it would like you to respond to. Things like supervisor or the percentage of time that the position is going to spend doing a specific activity. I would say that the thing that is nice about ChatGPT is once you kind of have a draft, you can refine that draft based on the input that you're putting in. And so I'm going to scroll back up a little bit. So in this particular case, right, it's done an estimate of the essential functions would include financial management, and it's giving you a couple of information. Unfortunately, when it ran this time, it didn't necessarily provide a summary. But you can address some of those issues by asking ChatGPT to elaborate or to change some of the items that it's generated. For this particular example, I'm going to say, thanks. Could you provide a summary that consists of 3 to 4 sentences? And it'll take that additional information and it will update it, right? So in this particular first draft, it didn't quite catch what we were looking for in the summary. And so I just prompted it to do that again. And so there are some times where you'll go through a reiterative process with it. I would say the thing that is nice about ChatGPT, it's learning from your interactions as well as what your preferences and stuff are. For me, it's pretty rare at this stage because I've used it so much that I have to ask it to go back and retype or redo something. But let's say that it didn't focus enough maybe on the leadership qualities of a position, or you felt like it should focus a little bit more on the financial management. You can ask it to make those changes. And then, if it's not incorporating it into the final document, you could say, great, can you add the summary to the job description you drafted? And it should rewrite the entire information. It puts the summary back in where it should be. And so again, we're hoping that this type of a tool helps accelerate the process, right? It's not necessarily going to create the final finished product for you, but we are finding that it's much easier to start with a good draft than it is to try to ask somebody to start completely from scratch. Hopefully you'll find this tool helpful as a way to kind of accelerate the process. But I would also say, don't stay confined to just job descriptions. I've used it that once I've come up with a job description that I felt was useful, I've asked it to generate interview questions that we would use when we're interviewing candidates for a position. Sometimes we've asked it to write a job announcement, which is a little different than a job description. And so I think ChatGPT as a whole has the opportunity, and through structured prompts, to really streamline and speed up the process.